People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. When you're strange, faces come out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange. People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down. When you're strange, faces go out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange. Alright, yeah. When you're strange, faces go out of the rain. When you're strange, no one remembers your name. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange.
Greetings, our children of the night. Welcome to Podcast One Shot, where we watch and analyze videos in order to discuss about. With me is the petty dabbler of the dark arts, the authenticator, aka Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, folks.
Also with us is the evil clown of cringe, Corrupt.
Hello. Clown? Really?
Surprisingly on time for once.
Huh. Fair point.
Also Hong Kong, because Clown World means.
Honk, honk.
Yeah, and I'm your host / zombie lover, the brainstormer of pop culture. How is everyone doing tonight?
What is that sound?
What sound?
What the hell is that? Is someone playing music?
No.
Not
It's like
anymore. We were just a minute ago playing Life is Strange by The Doors, but we ceased. I think that might be on your end, dude.
That was weird. Yeah, sorry about that.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm still kind of surprised Corrupt is on time.
I shall work on it on not being late in the future. My bad, everybody.
Well, no, honestly, I gotta be completely honest. I didn't expect you to show up for the one shot.
Yeah, we didn't even get through the intros and he'd already shut up.
I'm trying to be on time more. Sorry about that, guys.
That's fine.
It's all right. It was just unusual.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on with today's offering of complete and utter stupidity.
Right. But first, Dalton, a word from our sponsor. We don't have one.
Take care.
We will hopefully at some point be brought to you by you, our lovely audience, provided we ever, get one.
No
and
Patreon. No.
Also get a presence on some kind of crowdfunding site somewhere. But that's a issue of a different day.
So we will be covering Our Witches, Feminist Icons by Braylist of MTV.
Oh, that doesn't sound painful.
And thereby address one of the classic vintages of feminist stupidity. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Lacey Green.
Oh, Lacey Green.
May hell hath mercy on our souls.
1 second.
All right. Also, want to state we are not attacking MTV nor the person in the video. We are simply here to provide our counter arguments if need be. Again, we are not singling anyone out, just doing this for argument's sake.
And further to our usual point, yes, we know that Lacey, recently started getting more red-pilled, and that's great. But we're addressing Lacey Green as she was whenever this was made, which I assume was sometime in like 2016, 2017, thereabouts.
It says February 26, 2016.
Yeah. So, yeah. Our criticisms, such as they are directed at the Lacey Green of 2016, not the Lacey Green of the current year.
Oh, yeah, because the Lacey Green of current year isn't as insane.
Well, to be fair, as far as crazy feminist ideologues go, I've always found Lacey to be like the most benign of the crazy, stupid feminist ideologues. Probably because she's a sex-positive feminist as opposed to a sex-negative feminist, but
so she isn't running around Twitter saying that any display of sexuality is objectifying women.
No, she's more of the "how dare you suppress women's right to their sexual power" variety of feminist.
So.
Okay, so she gets a little leeway from me.
Yeah. And that is the last nice thing I have a feeling I'm going to be able to say about Lacey for the next, 20 minutes.
Excuse me. Sorry, just finishing some milk.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay.
God, that is cold.
And with that, Lacey thinks she can opine on my areas of expertise, so shall we get into it?
Let's get right into it.
Jack-o'-lantern.
Jack-o'-lanterns.
Jack-o'-lantern.
What do witches have to do with feminism? Turns out a whole lot.
I'm sorry.
Hey everyone, Lacey Green.
Okay. First of all, and I say this to all of the woo-woo coffee shop Wiccans out there.
Woo coffee shop Wiccans. Oh my god, I love you.
Well, I mean, is that in any way an accurate description of like 90% of these fucks? Okay. And yeah. Feminism has exactly zero to do with anything relating to the occult, unless you forcibly jam it in there like a wedge into a round hole.
I love that.
What is it?
Woo Wickedness. Oh my god, I'm sorry, Dalton. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's just already I get the feeling this is going to make my blood boil before we've even gotten into this, because she's already asserted that witches are by default feminist icons, and that's just okay.
They defy the patriarchy.
Let's continue. I have nothing left of substance to say about this segment other than groans, so let's just get to the next segment.
Right. Also, keep in mind we were only in the first 10 seconds of the video.
Yeah, jack-o'-lanterns.
Green here. You may have heard some buzz about The Witch, a Sundance film which went into wide release last Friday. I'll give a warning ahead before spoilers. Now, some have argued that a witch is the ultimate feminist icon, and it kind of makes sense. Think about witches in history. For ages, most people believed in witches. They really believed they were real, not just fairy tales. Before Christianity became a global superpower, witches...
A global superpower?
What?
Lacey. Far from simply believing in the existence of witches, some people just straight up were, as in they practiced shit, Lacey. So, I know you're only feeding off of like the trope that Hollywood feeds everybody, and that's, I'm not directing that portion of the angry rant at you, but Yeah, witches aren't another species. They're just people who learned to do a thing. In the pre-Christian classic sense of the word, anyway. The word witch comes from the old Anglo-Saxon word wisa, which means craft of the wise. Meaning that anyone who learned that craft was kind of by default a witch. There's some more etymology that's worth going into, but we'll get into that when you finish the next thing you're about to say.
Oh, that should be
Jack-o'-lantern.
exciting. Jack and Lantern.
One moment.
One moment in time.
Were sought after for their magic to create potions that heal, to help with childbirth, to give advice, to generate a good harvest. But as the more maternally oriented paganism was overrun by Christianity around 500 AD, public conception of witches got really dark. Suddenly, these women were being blamed for the problems that they were once called upon to help with. Male Christian leaders preached that these women and their witchcraft was actually the devil's work. This created a lot of distrust and paranoia about women who behaved out.
Okay. First thing.
What is it?
Yes, village wise women were essentially the folkloric kind of village priesthood of the pre-Abrahamic Europe. That being said, there were spiritual roles for both men and women in these cultures. In the case of the sort of what is now the Anglosphere, what was the UK, France, and Germany now, that she's referring to, women who had this kind of knowledge were expected to engage mostly in folk magic, and we can see this in the sort of tools and symbols associated with these roles. For the most part, witches' implements are things that you could find around the medieval and pre-medieval household: broomsticks, poppets, cauldrons, etc. They were household implements that were being used for non-household purposes. Whereas with wizards, which evolved mostly out of Celtic druids, who were sort of the more formal priests, most of their associated magical implements were more specialized and formal because they were hoped to have more potency, but were also more expensive. Anyway, that's a relative sidebar. But the point I'm going to try and make to you, Lacey, is paganism was not, strictly speaking, maternal. In pre-Abrahamic civilizations, there was a respect for both the attributes of masculinity and femininity. And this is one of the reasons why it utterly baffles me that feminists who actively want to distort and destroy gender roles use magical symbology as like their rallying cries.
Because
Why? Because in the pre-Christian, quote unquote pagan sort of mindset, the attributes of masculinity and femininity were not just supposed to be physical or even psychological. They were supposed to be an aspect of even the soul, i.e., even the spiritual aspects of the self were able to be classed in the broader terminology of masculinity and femininity. That's why there were those two separate roles for men and women who wanted to go into spiritual and metaphysical areas of study, because the place of the woman's place, quote unquote, was the maternal generative aspect of hearth and home, and it was the men's job to engage in the warrior aspect and the hunter aspect and the gatherer aspect. This is really quite excellently detailed in the three sort of the triads of archetypes for each of these roles, with women, the traditional witch triad was mother, maiden, crone, i.e., the young, youthful, whimsical, juvenile aspect of the maiden, the warming hearth, home, and healing of the mother archetype, and the ancient, darkened creature of the night that was embodied in the crone, because wisdom means no longer having to fear the things in the dark, essentially. With the men, that archetype was wanderer, warrior, and priest. The wanderer, i.e., the young apprenticed journeyman archetype that goes out into the world to seek knowledge. The warrior, who, fights and takes on the most traditionally masculine roles. And the priest, whose knowledge has become solidly abstract and academic from a life that he has spent both fighting dark things and also gaining that wisdom.
Also,
So I don't. Huh?
no, I was just gonna add on to a point you made earlier about why they use magical like symbolism and shit like that.
Go ahead.
No, I'm simply gonna say it's because I believe that they see Christianity as being very paternal. I'm sorry, is it not paternal, but is it being patriarchal? And
Yeah.
because they see it as being patriarchal, you know, they see witches and as being feminine, as being femininity and woman's way of striking back at patriarchy and patriarchal attitudes towards women. It's like a sense. It's like a way of rebelling, I guess.
Yeah, I also think they see to further your point, I think they see the Abrahamic religions of, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as kind of
Yeah,
the normal traditional default. So witchcraft is essentially edgy. It transgresses what they consider to be normal, natural, and traditional. So to gain power
exactly.
from that traditional structure, they embrace that edginess. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. And yeah, Lacey, on a practical note, in regards to the other thing you said, yes, the people who are responsible for healing the dark things in the world are also prone to being accused of doing those dark things by people who A, don't know any better, and B, know that if knowledge can be used one way and a beneficial way in order to heal, it can also be used to harm. This was actually an argument made by a lot of tribunals and witch hunters and things of that nature when the Burning Times was a thing. The idea was, if you accused a woman who was known to know curative healing remedies and so forth, if she knew how to use herbs and roots and spices and shit to heal people, could she not also inflict harm, hypothetically, with those very same skills? And given the number of spells that are, designed to do just that, and there are many, that's not exactly what you'd call an unfounded fear. The issue is, if you hate something so much that you are willing to accept things that are not it as it, you are going to basically broaden the definition of something so far out that it is no longer applicable to anything. I.e., if you see witches literally fucking everywhere, then you're not really going to be able to distinguish very well between that which is a witch and that which is not a witch. And that gets even more muddy when you consider the change of definition that witch experienced in the Middle Ages. Because again, etymologically speaking, witch just means craft of the wise. But when Christianity came in, they demonized it. Now, the reason why they demonized it is very simple. The same reason why there are actually passages in the Bible about, sorcery being forbidden and things. Because not for any, God helping reason, but because in a world where people have practical spiritual knowledge, there's no need for stories and narratives. And in a world where there's no need for stories and narratives, there's no need for moral indignation. And moreover, if you have the practical spiritual knowledge to simply summon a deity, then you don't need a priest to intercede with that deity on your behalf. I.e., if you can just draw a circle, light some candles, and summon your god or your angel or, what have you, and just talk to him on a relatively equal footing, him, she, or them, then you certainly don't need a priest coming in to absolve your sins. You can just talk to your god. And there's no need for the ineffectual distance of prayer, which involves, bowing your head, submitting your agency, and basically just hoping God forgives you. All of that goes out the window if people have the practical knowledge of how to summon shit. And so the priests wrote some shit about how engaging in practical spiritual knowledge was bad because it benefits priests to have a population of non-priests. But it does not benefit the non-priests to have priests. That's just essentially the huckstery, auto salesman middleman of the spiritual dimension.
The auto
Instead of
salesman
actually
middleman.
talking to Instead of actually talking to your god, you rely on this guy to intercede for you and hope that he knows what he's talking about, even if you don't. Sorry, Corrupt, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
No, I just like that. I like that a little bit. The middleman, I love that. By the way, but no, I just wanted to say that. Go ahead, Dalton. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was mostly done anyway, so we can move on to the next bit.
Out of line. After all, she might be a witch. By the 17th century in North America, these attitudes had collided head-on with Puritanism. The first colonists from England were pretty extreme Protestants. Puritanical attitudes gripped every facet of people's lives. People were really superstitious, they were religious, and truthfully, they were scared. They didn't know what was out there in this new land. And at the time, there was...
Okay, Lacey, you are completely sort of whitewashed in this particular area because they did very much know at least some of what was out there in the sense that Indians were out there. And who do you think got the most demonizing woo-woo devil worship accusations thrown at them? That would be the Native American shamans. Because again, in a spiritual hierarchy that is predicated on no one having actual practical spiritual knowledge, anything that does pertain to genuine spiritual knowledge is forbidden. Because if the sheep learn that they don't need to be afraid of the wolves, they might mistrust their shepherd. See. And the reason, Lacey, why women were more often accused of witchcraft is because it was understood in the classical gender dynamic, which again, the pagans and pre-Christians had in spades, so don't go, but Christianity or monotheism, because it's not accurate. There was an understanding that women had the generative impulse. They had the ability to create things. Hell, in Christianity alone, for as patriarchal as it can be, and it can be, I'll give that to you. In Christianity, a woman gives birth to God, i.e., Mary giving birth to Jesus. So even in Christian doctrine, there was this understanding that women had the generative impulse. And for the exact same reason as people didn't want homosexuality to be a thing, they didn't want witchcraft to be a thing, because it was considered a perversion of the sexual generative impulse. Because in the Puritan mind, Lacey, sex was viewed as the means by which you created new life. And so if you used your generative impulse for something other than creating new life, in the case of sodomy, pleasure, in the case of witchcraft, change in the world via the manipulation of that energy in its raw form, that was considered bad because you were supposed to quote the Bible, be fruitful and multiply. And it was doubly bad or doubly frowned upon by the priests because, again, if you use your energies, your generative impulse to affect the world rather than affect the creation of new life, then you have something the priests, for the most part, don't have, which is practical spiritual knowledge. And if you use sodomy to engage in spiritual pleasure, then you're not tying yourself to the necessity of taking care of the women's. And many of the moral systems in these religions, Lacey, I know it's going to make your feminist brain explode to hear me say this, but many of these moral codes were very, very fixated on the women's and protecting the women's. Why? Because women were the child bearers, and
Yeah,
we have a species to be, perpetuating here. That's the
that's
whole
why
point
men are
of be
considered.
fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, that's why men are considered disposable.
Yeah. So it's not that women were seen as fragile, Lacey. It is because women are seen as particularly powerful. Because a woman's generative impulse can actually produce a baby all by itself. A man's generative impulse needs to be filtered through a female in order to, beget that new life. I.e., if a man masturbates, then nothing is going to happen. But a woman can get fertilized from just about anywhere, and there's a good chance that she will be with child as a result of that generative impulse.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was checking something out.
Okay. Yeah, we can move on. Jack-o'-lanterns.
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 Strict moral and religious codes people were expected to abide by to avoid being overtaken by the devil, especially women. Now, the causes of the Salem witch trials were really complex, but a lot of it was driven by sexism, and more specifically, a fear of female sexual power. Women were seen, and still are seen, as the weaker sex. So centuries ago,
Okay, Dom, before you do, can I just say something?
Of
Go.
course.
Yeah,
You're all the brainstormer.
yeah, guys were also prosecuted as witches too, and were hanged and burned and shit like that too. And I might be tipping my showing my hand too soon, but I'm gonna bring up the example anyway. Giles Corey, if anyone knows that story.
Yes, he was crushed to death because he wouldn't plead either guilty or innocent to the accusation because
Oh yeah, I remember him.
he found the accusation itself to be so ridiculous that he wasn't going to dignify it with a response. And so they engaged in a practice known as pressing for a confession, which involved taking giant ass motherfucking
And
slabs of boulder.
they ground him, literally ground him down.
I watched it happen on in the Crucible when we were covering it from my English class sophomore year.
Yes, and to be fair to Giles Corey, he is probably one of the most prolific trolls in history, just because of what he said, as
Wait.
his dying words, when someone begged him to confess so that they could remove the weight, which was more weight. Godspeed to Giles Corey. I hope you found your way to some kind of positive afterlife for that shit, sir.
Tell them what they said for the people at home there, Dalton.
He said more weight when they asked, when they begged him to provide a new confession. His only response was more weight. as in, I'm not going to confess, so you're just going to have to get more stones. Which was honestly pretty badass, like historically so. But okay, while we're here, Lacey, again, women were seen as vulnerable, yes, to the devil. But again, the main reason for the fear of witches is because of the strength of the female generative impulse. Would you care to deduce what those two beliefs simultaneously together mean? Women are powerful enough that their generative impulse is so dangerous we need to fear them, and women are vulnerable enough to the influence of evil that we essentially need to have pity for them. It means that even in the fucked up moral power lines of the medieval definition of witchcraft, a woman can deed her soul to the devil, and she is the victim of that transaction. Now, I wouldn't bring this up except for the fact that there was a particular thing that male witches were often called. That thing, Lacey, was warlock.
Oh yeah, it's a slur.
Yeah, warlock, Lacey, means traitor. It's from an ancient Anglo-Saxon word which means traitor. And I would pronounce it, except I can't pronounce it. So you're just going to have to look it up if you want to know. But point being, when a female witch was accused of witchcraft, she was just usually referred to as a witch. And again, etymologically speaking, witch means wise one or wise woman. When a man was accused of witchcraft, he was referred to as a traitor. Why is this important? Because it means that we are erasing the woman's agency, her Puritan moral power lines of this. A woman deeds her soul to the devil, and she is still on some level blameless because the poor woman was tricked into it, obviously, and the only thing that makes her evil in this regard is that she laid with the devil. So in other words, the devil, who is male, corrupted the virtue of an otherwise unblemished woman, and that's why witches are evil. But they still won't actually be blamed for this. They will just be treated as poor, misunderstood victims for it. Men, though, men obviously cognizantly made this choice, and therefore they're traitors to us, everything we believe, and of course our God. So men commit apparently heinous acts, and they are referred to as traitors. Women commit heinous acts, and they're just called wives. And you have the gall, my darling, to say that this is about sexism rather than the simple notion that people fear A, what they don't understand, and B, what they are taught to fear by people who have a vested interest in them not understanding shit.
It technically is kind of sexism, but it's the other way around. If we're being honest.
Yeah, the notion that yeah, men are entirely accountable in all ways, even if they are tricked into something, and women are eternally blameless, even if they fully and cognizantly sell their fucking soul.
Couldn't agree more.
Double standarding, dumbass bastards.
Although entire books can be and have probably been written about all this stupid shit the Puritans believed.
I'd make a joke, but I kind of don't
in
want
case
to.
anyone is worried, for my soul, I have sold mine to no one. My soul is mine. You can fuck off.
Yeah. Okay.
Proceed. Jack-o'-lantern.
Thought women are more susceptible to corruption by the devil. The fact that women hold sexual power is one of the roots of misogyny, and all throughout history to this day.
Stop. Lacey.
Oh boy.
Why is it important that women are more susceptible to corruption? Because there's also, very traditionally speaking, the notion that women are more pure than men. Much of the reason why we give a shit about the purity of women is because it is assumed by default that women are more pure than men. I.e., there's no need to worry about men being corrupted because men are already on some level corrupted.
Yeah, a lot of the,
Like,
there's actually society is actually really sexist towards men. Men are considered stupid and violent and evil.
yeah, but by default, men
Yeah.
are baser animals and women are innocent. Even though in the parlance of the Christian and Judaic and Islamic creation stories, it is Eve who gives in to the serpent's temptation and takes the apple. Adam's only crime is that he believed Eve. Eve, however, totally blameless for buying into a talking snake.
You know what's also funny? Eve was Adam's second wife.
Yeah, Lilith was his
Yes,
first.
yes. This is a story that goes back actually into the story of Genesis in the Bible. In one chapter of Genesis, it says, quote, male and female, he created them, implying an equal level of creation. And then the second chapter of Genesis, it goes into how God made Adam fall asleep and took one of his ribs and made Eve. This is important because in ancient Judaic and pre-Judaic folklore, there was a demon by the name of Lilith who was supposed to be a cradle-robbing demon. And then when the books of Genesis were being written, it was sort of haphazardly implied that that demon, Lilith or Lilith, sought the babies of Adam and Eve because she was jealous of the species that Adam and Eve had created, because she essentially, when it came time to do the business of, procreation, and Adam was like, get under me, bitch, her response was, I was created in the same manner you were, therefore we're equals. You don't get to tell me how I'm going to be fucking. And for this, she was completely abandoned by Adam, because apparently Adam was a dickhead.
Oh, so pretty much like every human being on the planet.
Kind of. This really could have been solved by them deciding to rotate roles, but, I wasn't around when they made that decision. Don't feel too bad for Lilith, though, because she essentially got the better end of the deal. Because according to the Zohar, which is where this story comes from, she retaliated from being spurned by Adam by saying
stealing every baby in the world.
Well, not only that, but she said the secret name of God, which allowed her to steal essentially some of God's power, which incidentally is why we have the prohibition of not using the Lord's name in vain. It has nothing to do with swearing using, the term God. The reason why we even refer to the Abrahamic God as just God and not any of his many names like Jehovah or Yahweh is because there is a notion in Jewish folklore that to speak the name of something is to claim dominion over part of that thing's nature. So if you say the secret name of God, you bind God to some extent.
That's why demons don't tell you their names, because once you have a demon's name, you have their power.
Yeah, you can choose to bind it or control it or exercise it, depending.
Yeah, you can control them and shit.
Yeah, and according to, I guess, the rest of the story, she left the garden. She shacked up with the Jewish angel of death, Samael, and she gave birth to all of the incubi and succubi of hell.
What?
Huh.
Yeah,
Huh?
I forgot. I always thought Samael was the angel you could not trust, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, he is the angel of death, so
He
Well, actually, more specifically, the angel of violent death, because there's an angel named I believe it's Azrael, who is the angel of merciful death.
Yeah. Like Samael, if I remember, you can't trust him. He was always kind of on his own side, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, because he essentially God in the old in the old Jewish folklore trusted
Yeah.
him with giving death to humans after they transgressed in the garden, and he enjoyed it too much, so he was cast out for basically enjoying his job too much.
Yeah.
To be fair, his job was killing things, so much the better. But
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But he was one that you didn't really trust, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, you didn't want to get essentially anywhere near Samael because he would kill you. Just essentially just for the lulz.
And stab you in the back.
Well, actually, the way he did it was always interesting. According to, again, I believe this is the Zohar. I've read a lot of the sort of extra-canonical stuff from the Bible, but I can't keep it all straight all the time. He had a sword that had poison in it, and he would come upon a dying person, and he would drip poison into their mouths.
Yeah, that's where the poison of God moniker comes from, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. I learned more from you guys than I did from anything else in my life so far.
Yeah, this is why extra academic reading is important, because most of the most interesting things I learned are things I learned in my free time just from reading things.
We barely covered anything in my history classes. Now that I think about it.
What did you cover? Was it just slavery?
No, actually, we barely covered that. Kind of glossed over it.
Let me guess. But my world wars.
Yeah.
No.
Was it colonialism and shit?
No.
What was it?
Ancient stuff like Rome, Egypt.
Yeah.
See, now I don't necessarily mind that, because I think
That's weird.
in America we have this we do kind of have an American-centric view of everything. I do think it would help if we covered more like world history and shit.
We did cover some American stuff, which like slave trade and stuff. But I just kind of figured that was a normal thing you covered.
Yeah.
But honestly, again, we just gloss over a lot of topics. I don't remember a lot of it. It also doesn't help that I was in class just full of fucking idiots. So.
Yeah. Teenagers are jackasses again,
Teenagers
which is why
are dumb. Oh my god, teenagers are fucking retarded.
which is why most of the studying I did was on my own subjects that I actually gave a damn about, instead of whatever it was we were supposed to be doing.
As still kind of technically a teenager, I will not take offense to that.
Well, obviously, hashtag not all, because there are people who there are people who at the age of 5 understand more about the world than full-grown adults, and there are people who even at the age of 80 learn no more than a 10-year-old. So
I will say this. Well, I kind of want to say something. I kind of want to I kind of want to say this in reference to in response to what Dalton said. What is it the blue check mark say on Twitter? Oh, it is all men, and if you say it isn't, that's just excusing misogyny.
except
What I have to
I'd
say to those guys?
use the term toxic masculinity, and then it is in fact all men apparently.
What's up? Oh,
The thing I have to say to those idiots is, you're all a bunch of fucking idiots and stop wasting everyone's fucking time. Get a life.
yeah.
But if they actually did get a life, very ironically, they wouldn't have a living to make. Because they basically threw all their chips in the gender studies basket, and now here we are.
Yeah, they make money. You know how they make money off of Patreon and Twitter? They write shitty books no one reads except for the people who read their stupid fucking hot takes on Twitter. If men
Case in point, the very ironically titled Dr. Christy Winters, who, against all odds, actually has a PhD, and I can't.
It's remember back when Sargon was beefing with Ethan Ralph?
Yeah.
Guess who joined up with Ralph to fucking to go after Sargon?
Was it Christy?
The esteemed Christy Winters and her potato-shaped henchman Kevin Logan.
Okay, I don't hate Kevin quite as much as I do Christy.
I don't know.
Because she's worse because she actually, like I say, she has a doctorate, and therefore she is by default sort of given more legitimacy. Whereas Kevin, at least will have Sargon on a stream occasionally. I mean, he's I'm not going to police him just because he has different opinions. Because
he's such a parasite. Like, it's not that he has different opinions. Like, I don't give a fuck if he's like a social justice warrior. I don't care. But he's such a fucking parasite.
Oh, he is a duplicitous fuck. I'm not disputing his duplicitous fuckness. I'm just saying that given the choice between Dr. Christy Winters, weep for all of Academia, everybody, and Kevin Logan, I will tolerate the existence of Kevin Logan much more, because
it's a lesser of two evil things. Is it a lesser of two evil?
Because it's like there is a part of me that has an immeasurable love for scholarship and learning. So when I see someone like Christy Winters, who essentially has a PhD in woo, it makes something in me very, very angry, very, very quickly.
I guess it's just I don't like Kevin Logan because he is such, like, I know like hypocrisy comes with that crew, but he's so smug about it, and like, oh my, I can't stand him.
Yeah, I don't. And again, I don't. He's another one that I'm like, does he realize he's doing it, or is he just this fucked in the head? Like, because there are times where I'm like, you obviously know what you're saying is bullshit, but then there's other times where I'm like, wait, is he just this fuck in the head? And then I'm gonna sit here and essentially laugh at someone who is incapable of thinking properly.
I get what you mean by like wanting to respect. Like I also enjoy like healthy, like debate and different points of view. I just don't like how disingenuous Kevin Logan is. Like that, I think, is my biggest issue. Like, I don't like the disingenuousness of Kevin Logan.
Yeah, the disingenuous of anyone is really just no. It's insufferably annoying. But anyway, speaking of disingenuous fucks, let's get back to Lacey Green circa 2016 for more of the same.
Because she's kind of mellowed out since then, right?
She's gotten better. She's even as far as I'm aware still dating Chris Ray Gun, and they've been dating for like 3 years.
Okay.
Now it kind of fucked over Chris Ray Gun because he's kind of gone off the reservation, but
oh really? Like, what do you mean?
He's picked up a lot of the disingenuousness. Like, he's become a part of like, why are you guys taking this so seriously? Why are you guys treating this like it's an actual problem out in the world? Crowd, like,
oh, like he's pretending it's just college campuses and shit now.
Yeah, he's kind of gone over the he's even started saying things like, I was only ever doing this for jokes. I never took it seriously at all. And I'm like, dude, do you not remember the Black Lives Matter fucking lynching thing that happened? You were on that stream with Sargon, and you know that was a thing. Clearly, this is kind of an issue. And hell, I mean, Antifa, hello? I mean,
Has he
it's
gone
one of those
SJW?
moments where you just want to go, is this thing on? Like, they destroy property and wreck people's lives and clump people around the fucking head until they're bleeding internally.
Has he gone SJW?
I don't think so. I think he's just I don't know if he's gone SJW. I just think he's kind of let himself in this little bubble where it's just he's kind of pulled the Mr. Medicare thing of it's only stuff on the internet. It's not like this is in any way serious or impactful on the real world. And anyone who does take this seriously is a moron for taking it seriously.
Mm,
You're a fucking idiot.
But he mocked Sargon for running for office in UKIP. It was one of those kind of things. It's like,
alright.
Chris, I hate to break it to you, but as much as you don't want to believe it's an issue, it's an issue. You had it right before.
Alright.
Anyway, Lacey.
There are many attempts to control female sexuality, including accusing her of witchcraft if she is insubordinate, if a man feels seduced, if a woman feels threatened. It was actually mostly women accusing other women to a court of male leaders during the witch trials. The mass hysteria resulted in...
I like that. I like when they say, "Oh my God, it's women." I like when they say it's women, but selling out other women and then pivot it somehow back to men are bad.
You know, it's weird. We actually did. We covered this stuff in my literature class when we were talking about the Crucible, the Salem witch trials. I mean,
Yeah.
which I actually found very interesting, historically wise. Not like
Might experiment myself.
Yeah. And okay, Lacey. The main feature of those that were accused of witchcraft were the ones that were on the outside of society. And yes, when the Puritans were concerned, that included people who were more sexy than they should have otherwise been, because the Puritans were sadistic fucks who were essentially, to use the feminist terminology, extremely sex negative.
remind me to put Puritan Salem on the list of places not to go when time traveling.
If ever you get a time machine, I will remind you of that. But until then, I'm just going to quietly plead the fifth.
If you take me with you, I'm not going past the 90s.
Honestly, I'd just go to the future with a time machine. I think that'd be better.
I'd go back a bit far, but then again, like most of the time, people who were disabled were locked up in insane asylums, so there's not very far back I could go.
I mean,
I think you'd probably go to the 90s too.
We can give you a cane.
Yeah, but that wouldn't really help much, because the reason why I use a walker and not a cane already is because I have a bit of a balance issue. I need something on both sides of me, otherwise I trip.
I could put you in a wheelbarrow.
Right, because that totally isn't going to look weird to
Well, honestly, I don't think I'd really.
anyone ever. Okay.
Honestly, I think myself wouldn't really be able to go anywhere in past either.
I don't know. I don't know. I think you'd be mostly fine. You never know when and if people are gonna be accused of awful things vis-a-vis witchcraft and shit. But whatever.
Well, if I time travel with my regular clothes and to like Puritan Salem, yeah, I'm
Oh
probably.
yeah, you're gonna be tied to the whipping post before you even stepped onto the dock.
Just dress in a suit and a boulder with like a little boulder hat. Hello there, everyone. I'm Brainstorm at top of the morning to you.
Funny enough, I actually am part Irish.
See, it all works out in the end.
You well, to be fair, the Irish did not have did not exactly have it easy back then either. Because there was that whole
Potato famine.
instituted famine of potatoes to drown out the peasants thing, and then there was the Irish slave issue that not great. And you being part Mexican probably wouldn't help matters there either.
Being part Mexican. I guess he's the point.
I'm also I'm a lot of things now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I think I would have to take a DNA test though, because I'm not sure. Because I was told this by my grandmother, who was a little crazy. So.
Yeah, but okay, Lacey. If a woman seduced a man, that would not likely get her tried for witchcraft, unless the man wanted an out. And even then, he probably wasn't going to get it, and therefore only simpletons accused people who seduced them of witchcraft, because in Puritan New England, it was both parties who were accountable if a sexual act outside of marriage or outside of the norms took place. If a man fucks a woman, that man is probably getting put in the stocks and whipped and then branded with a giant F for fornicator. And that woman is going to get a scarlet letter tattooed onto herself.
When a man fucks a woman.
You know what's weird is that I'm assuming greatly after that time, not greatly after, but the time after that, there was such a thing as prostitution, and even before that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There was a whorehouse in Salem, if I remember my history correctly. Actually,
Hypocritical jackasses.
well, I mean, on some level, I can't quite blame them, because when everything and everyone around you tells you to do anything but fuck, the one thing in the world you want to do, especially in drab winter New England, is going to be fuck. But that
keep warm.
That being said, yeah, fuck you, you hypocritical bastards. But interesting thing about the thing I just laid out there, with the man getting whipped and branded with an F, versus the woman getting the scarlet letter tattooed onto her clothing, Lacey. Which one of those you suppose is less severe? One person gets a letter branded into their skin, and the other just has it embroidered on her clothes.
Yeah, the more I hear about history, it really does seem like men get the short end of the stick.
Because men were responsible for doing things, and women were usually thought to have things done to or for them.
Well, I'm also not saying that that's not entirely true. It just seems like there's a huge difference between how
traditions exist for a reason. It's just those traditions are also fucked.
Here.
Yeah. Anyway, say something else, Lacey, so we can vomit internally again.
So we can vomit internally. I love that.
I don't know. This doesn't hit me as hard as it probably hit you, Dalton.
She hasn't said anything like brain crappingly stupid yet, but I get the feeling we're gonna get there soon.
Multiple hangings. Now, if you think about it, many tropes and creatures and folklore and fairy tales demonize a woman's sexuality. In European mythology, mermaids were beautiful and seduced sailors with their voices. Captains ordered their men to cover their ears and resist, because if he gave in to the mermaid, he'd be dragged down and drowned. Slightly more modernly is the
Okay, but that's just a practical thing, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Sailing is fucking hard, Lacey.
Not
So
only that, yeah, sailors often humans often came up with reasons for why certain things happen to them. It's not because women are bad. It's literally because humans are superstitious and easily prone to thinking up wild fucking stories to justify a world they don't understand.
and Lacey, you of all people should understand the myth of the siren because you are supposed to be quote unquote sex positive, love. The dangerous thing about the siren was that her power was so intoxicating that it could overwhelm a man's reason. That is why that aspect of sexuality in the siren story was shunned, because people didn't want to fucking die because they essentially lost the battle between their dicks and their heads. But incidentally, Lacey, there are also mythical examples of creatures who thrive off of male sexual stereotypes. The Minotaur, for example, the bull was a symbol of fertility. Therefore, things that were implied to rape women were very often bull or goat like. That's why
Yeah, that's why satyrs rape chicks.
that's
Right.
also incidentally why the devil looks like a fucking satyr, because the satyr was the symbol of sexual power, and therefore, in a culture that demonized sexual power, the guise of the devil was rather perfectly thought to be similar to a satyr. And
Wait,
incidentally,
I'm sorry. I just have to point this out. I've read the Percy Jackson series, and one of the characters is a satyr named Grover.
yes,
Grover. Oh my god, I love that name.
yes.
I just realized, I just learned that satyrs apparently read 20. I don't know, that kind of puts in weird.
Well, to be fair to him, he restrained himself enough that he only fucked the daughters of Aphrodite, who were very, very interested in fucking to begin with. So
That's true.
Also,
you don't
what do you call
you
them?
don't need to be worried about Grover raping anybody.
Also, incubi also fucked ladies and some men.
So just
Ooh, prayer shawl. What is this?
is there just a difference between incubi and succubi?
Incubi were the male of their species. Succubi were the female of the species, and
Yeah,
both fucked basically anyone that they were capable of fucking.
So essentially, they're lust demons.
Yes,
yes.
they are principally speaking the demons of lust. Yes.
So one thing too is for sleep paralysis. They're also considered one of the reasons for sleep paralysis, along with the old lady who shits on your chest.
What the
Although,
fuck?
yeah,
An
there's
old hag sits on your chest.
yeah, there was that's the legend of the night hag, who allegedly would essentially uh find you in the middle of the night in your room and claw at you and torment you, and if you resisted her, she would sit on your chest until you could not move, and usually wouldn't go away according to the lore until you die.
You said sit. I don't know why, but I thought Corrupt said something else.
Because I did. But sit is more accurate. No one shits on your chest. Well, I mean, I assume she doesn't shit on your chest. That would be unfortunate.
Okay, that mental image I never need ever, but okay.
I really wish I could drink right now.
Get a root beer or something.
I'm out.
Oh no. Lol.
I ran out yesterday. God.
Can you just imagine some old woman just sitting on top of your chest? Like that just sounds awful.
Yeah. And incidentally, that is considered evil because the hag is ugly. If she was a beautiful, attractive young woman, the concern would be her sexual power overwhelming you.
Well,
when
honestly, it'd still be
when-
terrifying because I
yeah,
couldn't move.
when it's an older woman, the source of the fear, if you can call it that, is that this woman has lost her natural youthful fertility and therefore is a inherent perversion to the natural order, essentially. These post hoc justifications for this shit are not new, Lacey. These are exactly the arguments that a clergyman from the 1600s would have made in these situations. So I'm not making this shit up. I'm just doing the historical digging that you failed to do because you actually don't understand shit about this. And that is why I feel perfectly justified in telling you to get your fucking feminism as far away from my arts as possible. Thank you very much.
Or he'll put a curse on you.
No, she's not worth it. She's not worth the prep time it would take for me to get ingredients and wait for the appropriate sign of the moon and wait for the appropriate astrological signs to align appropriately. Curses are really wasteful fucking magic.
One day, dude, I know you're gonna do a curse. I know it.
Yeah, and I hope that when I do that, it will be someone who has done something incredibly horrible, like killed someone that I care about or raped someone that I care about. Then I will feel justified in doing the awful things to them. But until then, curses are spiteful, hateful, wasteful magic. And it's not even necessarily a moral issue I have with them. It's just, why would I put that much effort into a spell that's just supposed to harm someone who's fucking probably not even worth the effort? Usually detestable fuckwits bear their own consequences. Because when you're that much of a detestable fuckwit, something is going to bite you in the ass sooner or later. I don't need to waste a curse on someone who probably is perfectly capable of cursing themselves, metaphorically speaking.
Okay.
Anyway, let's continue with Lacey.
And Vital, sometimes portrayed as a vampire, who seduces a man, sucks his blood, kills him, puts him in danger. Do you see the sexism here? Female sexuality is the cause of disaster. Now, this is more or less
Pause. Right, Lacey, because there are absolutely no male vampires or anything.
No vampires seduce
culture
women.
whatsoever.
I think hey, Don, I think you're echoing a little.
Sorry. God damn it. Is this better?
Yeah, you sound. It's just I thought I was hearing something.
Okay.
Continue.
Yeah, but Lacey, my darling, you have just been completely and utterly selective about which mythologies you feel like selectively interpreting. You just did the thing I have a problem with Jordan Peterson for so often doing, times about 10. You chose to pick the sirens and the fucking I can't remember what her second example was after sirens.
What vampires?
Yeah. Okay. So Lacey, sirens are the dangers of female sexuality, and satyrs are the example of male sexuality in both of in the same mythological system. Something important I want you to pay attention to, Lacey. What violent thing does a siren actually do? Nothing. She just sings. And the thing that is dangerous about her is that all she needs to do is be as beautiful as possible, and that will turn the men who she is vulnerable to into fucking morons, because it's implied that men think more with their dicks than with their brains. They're so horny that they don't have the power to resist a siren. Meanwhile, what does the satyr do? The satyr actively rapes women, usually. and men too, to be fair, but that's neither here nor there. Point being, the mythological example you gave for the female power fantasy is reliant upon the weakness of men. The male counterexample that I gave involves a creature actually doing violent shit to you, unprovoked and without warning. Does this actually dictate sexism against women, Lacey? Or is this yet another example of, well, if men weren't so vulnerable to their sex drives,
Ugh.
they wouldn't be in danger ever? Derp. In other words, the Siren story basically dictates the mythological equivalent of toxic masculinity. Now on to the vampire, Lacey. Again, I shouldn't have to go much further than this because, you know, for as many female vampires as there are, Lacey, there are probably about 10 more male ones.
Yeah, I was gonna mention a few things. In all honesty, I think there are probably more male vampires than there are female vampires, and then you should focus on that. Then, like, I guess the male fatale thing, or
The femme fatale, Lacey, is dangerous because women are considered to be more pure. The way that the femme fatale almost always works, Lacey, is she clothes herself in an affectation of innocence, and then when it turns out that she is not actually innocent, the person she is seducing pays the price for believing in female innocence. However, would you suppose what happens, Lacey, when people don't attribute innocence to women? If you accuse a woman of anything, it's going to be your head on the pike if you can't substantiate that. Unless, in the case of witches, when in the medieval mind what made witches bad was that they were the prostitutes of the devil. They had fucked the devil, and the devil's evil male demoness had essentially jumped into them. Women were corrupted by the devil because the devil is male and women are pure in the symbolic parlance we're using here. So in other words, even the case of witches can just be attributed to male archetype bad, exposure to male archetype makes otherwise pure woman bad. Therefore, we should feel bad for the women because they were tricked by an evil devil thing, and we should call men traitors because they were obviously in control of their actions when they made this bargain, even though the corresponding women who make this bargain must have surely just been tricked.
I was also going to bring up. You ever heard of Dracula?
Yeah.
I want to be honest, I've never really heard of a famous female vampire.
Well, I can think of one, and this one historically did in fact exist. Her name was Elizabeth Bathory. She was rather famously one of the inspirations for both Bram Stoker's incarnation of Dracula and also the evil queen in the story of Snow White. Now, Elizabeth Bathory was an incredibly beautiful woman. And when she found out that she was aging, she assumed that it was the result essentially of her virginity spoiling. Now, in order to get this back, she would call out to the villages around her castle and have them send the, poor peasant girls, the young virginal peasant girls, to her castle to, quote unquote, serve as handmaidens. She would then butcher them and bathe in their blood, under the assumption that the inherent purifying qualities of virgin blood would help sustain her beauty.
How do you spell her last name?
I believe it's Batchary, I believe.
Could you say that again? Like,
Batchary.
found it.
There.
Countess Elizabeth Bathory d.S. was a Hungarian noblewoman and reputed serial killer from the noble family of Bathory, who owned land in the Kingdom of Hungary. She has been labeled by Guinness World Records as the most prolific female murderer.
Yeah, she killed dozens, possibly even hundreds of young virginal peasant women before anyone was the wiser. And the only reason why she got caught is because she ran out of victims in the villages surrounding her castle. So she tried to trick one of the kings that she was under's daughter, or was it queen she was under's daughter? Regardless, the nobilities fulfilling this role, and in so doing revealed herself to people she was actually accountable to. Had she not accidentally done that, she probably would have gone on killing for the rest of her life.
Though the
Young
precise
virginal
number of
women.
her victims is debated.
Yes.
She ain't that pretty.
To be fair, the standards of beauty were probably significantly lower back then, and also we don't really know how accurate the productions of her portraits are.
Fair.
And
But
both
I'm just also saying that because she was a terrible person and beauty is only skin deep.
Yeah. Again, this is the woman who inspired both part of Bram Stoker's Dracula and the evil queen from Snow White. So this was a historically and even legendarily evil bitch.
Well, she's in the Guinness Book of World Records, so.
Yeah. She inspired two great mythical characters. She killed dozens and possibly hundreds of women, and she won the Guinness World Record for the most prolific female serial killer. So yeah, this woman is an evil bitch. But incidentally, Lacey, Elizabeth Bathory exists, like, as a matter of historical fact. We know she existed, and we know she did these things. The existence of the creatures you're talking about are either non-human and therefore really suck as human analogs, or arguably don't exist in the first place. So, would you care to provide us with a possible male counterexample to Elizabeth Bathory? Bearing in mind that Elizabeth Bathory's reasons for doing what she did were actually related to her femininity, i.e., she wanted to maintain her feminine beauty, and so she killed virginal women. Most men do nothing whatsoever in the name of masculinity, but Elizabeth Bathory actually did do things in the name of her own femininity to maintain her beauty.
Jack the Ripper.
True, but he wasn't doing anything in the name of masculinity, was he?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah. As far as we're aware of his motives, he didn't do anything in the name of masculinity. As far as we're aware of Elizabeth Bathory's motives, yeah, she did, in fact, do things in the name of her own femininity, including murder and bathe in the blood of many, 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 many virginal women. Yeah.
A part of me, like, again, if I had a time machine, part of me wants to go back in time and like kill all the those type of people, but I know I can't, just on the fact that world would be extremely different if I did.
Well, that, and also, given that a lot of these people were in positions of very high standing, and you're part Irish and part Mexican, you might not even get a chance to get near them, because,
Sniper rifle.
classism. Well, yeah, but I would imagine your advanced technology would be taken from you, reverse engineered, and then we would have jumped the weapons market about 2 centuries into the future, and we'd have to deal with a version of the Revolutionary War where the British had sniper rifles instead of muskets. And
I could be gone. Well, I could be gone before then. So.
Well, yeah, but but what I'm saying is, if anyone did catch you and managed to reverse engineer your sniper rifle, that would change basically gun warfare for the foreseeable future, even after you left. Because what's going to be more useful to people, a musket or this new sniper rifle looking motherfucking thing we've discovered?
Yeah, that's fair.
And
crossbow then, century thing is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I probably wouldn't, just on the fact that history changing and all that.
I would maybe go back to certain areas in history just to. I'd kind of do something similar to the Doctor from Doctor Who. I wouldn't go back to change anything specifically. I would just go back to kind of be a behind the scenes observer of history.
Doctor Who changes history all the time.
Usually by accident, though. And half the time he also makes the history that was supposed to happen anyway happen. So
time travel, man.
You can't keep it straight in your head. Douglas Adams was right. The hardest thing about time travel is tensing it.
No, it's just every time you try to think about how it really works, you just can't fucking think about it.
Yeah, logic kind of gets tangled up into a little knot.
All right, jack-o'-lanterns.
Jack-o'-lanterns.
Of the movie The Witch. Many spoilers are now ahead. In the movie, we watch a puritanical family fall into hardship and real sorcery, which they blame on their teenage daughter, Thomasin. And when we see the witch approach her younger brother, Caleb, she's seductively dressed, she lures him in for a kiss, and when he's possessed and returns to the family, he vomits an apple, a parallel to Eve's original sin. Another story about the evils of female sexuality. And in the movie, before the witch caught...
No, it wasn't. It was just that she was tempted and took the bait.
Okay. Again, Lacey. Eve is the one who took the apple from the serpent. And Adam's only crime was trusting Eve. Meanwhile, Adam and Eve are held equally accountable to having taken the apple, bearing in mind that it was the serpent who tempted Eve, and it was Eve who tempted Adam. Now, I may be a little bit old-fashioned, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with Adam believing his wife. Especially given that at this point they are the only two motherfucking humans on the planet, according to the biblical narrative. That being that as it may, I'm sorry, but there is a higher burden of proof on Eve because she listened to a talking snake. And even possibly keeping in mind that in the Garden of Eden, supposedly all animals could talk, she already knew that she wasn't supposed to take the apple because God told her not to take the apple. And this random serpent said to take the apple. So even if we allow that all animals could talk within the context of the Garden of Eden, even if we allow that Eve was somehow tricked, even if all of these things, Lacey, we still have a situation where Eve knew what she was doing was wrong, listened to the snake anyway, and then Adam only listened to his wife. Now, Adam does hold some accountability for this, of course, because he also was told by God that he shouldn't do this. But given that, again, this was A, his wife, and B, the only other human being on the motherfucking planet at the time, according to the text, I call that significantly less egregious than listening to a talking motherfucking snake, bearing in mind that snakes are quite poisonous and quite non-human, whereas a woman is quite admirable and pure, as we have established. It's nothing to do with her sexuality. It has everything to do with her making a mistake and then outsourcing that mistake onto everyone motherfucking else. But Adam is held equally accountable to Eve's sin, even though he only listened to her, and she's the one who listened to the fucking snake. Also, Lacey, I don't know if The Witch itself as a movie is like caked in Christian imagery, which it probably is because it's set in the Middle Ages and shit. But you do know that there are dozens of other things an apple can mean in that context, right? It's very possible that you just jumped right into a biblical parallel that wasn't actually fucking made. And again, the main problem with the witch in The Witch is that she uses her sexual power for bad things. Now, that's kind of important because there is absolutely nothing wrong with women's sexual power as it's understood in the classical sense. Because again, in the classical sense, the woman's sex drive was seen as her expression of the divine generative impulse, i.e., be fruitful and multiply. It's how she's using it that is the problem here, and it's how it's used that's always the problem in these kind of witch trial stories. People are afraid of how this power that women, and very often women specifically, have is being used. So it's an attempt, a very fucked up, very, I don't know what they were thinking, attempt to make sure that women use their sex drive to something resembling good rather than doing it for their own selfish impulses. Essentially, this is just trying to make sure that women use their sex drive constructively. Whereas again, men, when they engage in these kind of behaviors, are not afforded any sympathy whatsoever and are very often referred to as traitors, because they are supposed to be accountable for their decisions, no matter how likely it is that they were tricked into them, and women are supposed to be the victims, even when they are the devil's motherfucking whores. Incidentally, I reject both sides of this equation because I don't think that sex is specifically for a generative impulse. Or rather, I don't think that's only what it's for. I'm perfectly fine with everyone using their sexuality for pleasure and power and whatever else they can use their sexuality for, Lacey. But you, my darling, are very much in the camp that says women are supposed to use their sexual power, but only for my moral reasons and no one else's. You and your feminist ilk, Lacey, are the new Puritans. Now, you get some leeway for essentially being the one Puritan who goes, women's sexuality is a good thing, but you're still saying they need to use it specifically for your moral reasons, rather than allowing them to be individuals capable of their own individual choices. Moving on. Jack-o'-lanterns.
As his havoc received long and eerie pauses on a wild rabbit, which is a traditional pagan symbol of sexuality and fertility. It's the paranoia about Thomason's feminine power that ultimately drives her entire family mad. But the twist is that this chain of bizarre events lands her in a coven where her burgeoning power is actually dangerous. So does sexism turn women into witches, or...
Lacey, power is, by its very nature, dangerous.
I bet
And-
they said. I'm sorry.
And this is why I don't have so much leeway for sex positive feminists as actual sex positive feminists do, because you appear, Lacey, to want women's sex drive to be the only power in the fucking universe that cannot ever be misused for any reason whatsoever. Lacey, you want women's power to be both unquestionable and also eternally pure, so that your power is the only power that cannot be used in any negative way whatsoever. You want all the authority to have as much sexual power as you want, but none of the accountability that goes along with the use of that power. Well, I'm sorry, Lacey, but to quote Stan Lee, great power comes with great responsibility. And that is the entire crux behind most female witch panics. It's because the power women are wielding is, at least in the Puritan and the Christian mind, not being used well. It's not being used with responsibility, and that is what makes it dangerous. And never fucking you mind the 30% of witch trials that were men on average, which means that in a significant proportion of cases, they were significantly higher than 30% of the accusation.
People like Lacey never really consider men, though.
Well, that's neither here nor there. But the same is true regardless.
No, I
And-
agree with you. I was just making that comment that they never.
Yeah, no, I get where you're doing. Also, Lacey, may I point out that in the medieval mind, male witches or warlocks were supposed to fuck the devil as well. So on top of believing that they had fucked the devil, the witch hunters also believed they had committed sodomy. So on top of being able to, in top of being guilty of the sin of selling their soul, they were also gay. Which makes them even worse because they don't love women. Shock horror. And our entire moral system is there for the benefit of the women, remember, Lacey? Okay. I'm getting very tired. I wish I had more fire to give this, because it deserves more, but I just don't.
I agree with you. I'm like, sorry. Oh, I kind of, I'm just tired of listening to Lacey's.
See, this is why Lacey, I guess, is more dangerous than I gave her credit for, because she says things in such a positive, benign way that it makes it harder for her. It makes it harder to get angry at her, even when the things she's saying are very angry, anger-inducing.
I find her mostly to be like tedious. It's like this, right? She doesn't. It's not that she elicits any real emotion, because she's so tepid and boring to listen to. So listening to her ramble about her nonsense is just very tedious and tiring in and of itself, and I just can't take it. But I get what you're saying, Dalton. I agree with you.
Yeah. And also, Lacey, while I'm here and can talk about this, a word about modern Wicca. Modern Wicca actually doesn't go back very far at all. It was created by a man by the name of Gerald Gardner, who incidentally was a male feminist of the time, essentially because he wanted to create a system of spirituality that had its roots in ancient folk magic that was an excuse for the people who adopted it to make with their sexual experiences. So essentially, Wicca was created by a male feminist who wanted to fuck indiscriminately. And even the Wiccans, Lacey, you probably wouldn't know this because you probably haven't done any research on it, but even the Wiccans, as crazy woo-woo new agey as they are, allow for the respect for both masculine energy and feminine energy, which again makes me wonder why the Gender is just my social construct brigade ever want to use witchcraft as a means of empowerment? Because in witchcraft, gender roles are baked into the structure of your very soul. So that's not really giving much credence to my social construct. Incidentally, also, the people who embodied both masculinity and femininity simultaneously, who balanced it, were considered to be more likely to be shamans by Native Americans and even certain voodoo practitioners. There's this old saying called two-spirited, which basically means someone who embodies both the masculine qualities of spirituality and the feminine qualities of spirituality simultaneously. And it was thought that they had the secret of or the inclination to walk between worlds. So again, magic is not exclusively feminine, Lacey, and the fact that you would hyper-emphasize the maternal aspects of these traditions while completely sidestepping the masculine ones is complete fucking bullshit. Okay, let's conclude this thing that we are doing.
We're almost done.
Are women truly that evil and powerful? There are a lot of ways to interpret the ending. But anyway, I definitely suggest giving this one a watch. It's beautifully shot, beautifully done. I just really enjoyed it from start to end. If you saw it, let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you next time. So I just want to know, what do you think about...
Okay, so I guess that was it.
Oh, Lacey. Again, in pre-Abrahamic religions, it was thought that both men and women were powerful. And even then, magic was a specialty skill. Just like any other variety of expertise, it was something you needed to devote your life to. So not every man and every woman knew the things that we, have come to know as magic. And most of the magic that was employed on the regular by pagan cultures, Lacey, was warrior-based magic. So in referring to them as more maternal than the Abrahamic religions, you have completely marginalized the average, everyday warrior mages who were probably the most common users of these kinds of magic. For example, most of the artifacts we have from the Viking Age were icons and amulets and talismans relating to male warrior gods like Thor, Odin, Loki, etc. So you've completely messed up the framing on this from the get-go, not to mention all the other stupid shit you've said, which we've gone over already. I just couldn't think of a place to put that, so I'm sticking it here at the end because it's relevant. Okay. That felt good. It felt good to yell at her for saying that. And side note, this goes out to every other, again, coffee shop Wiccan who thinks that magic is the most feminist possible thing you can have. Because I hate to break it to all the Antifa Wiccans out there, because I'm sure there must be some. But the Hermetic tradition, which is the most prolific mystical tradition in the Western world, gave rise to things like humanism and liberalism. So unless you want to rescind your liberals get the bullet too accusation, leave magical traditions alone. Thanks.
Also, Sarah wasn't saying anything, I was eating.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured this was going to be kind of Dalton's show with that video.
Like, most of my stuff is general philosophy. I don't really specialize in the Wiccan shit. That's mostly Dalton. I only know about general philosophy.
Sorry if I monopolized the thing too much. It's just
no. Somebody needs to take it to her.
Yeah, this is just something that's in my wheelhouse, and with all the fucking magic as a like feminist power fantasy articles coming out lately. It's really stuck in my craw in a lot of different ways.
Like, it's basically, it's pretty much like you said. It's mostly just female power fantasy shit.
Which completely completely disregards the masculine aspects of nature and supernatural forces and whatnot. But what the fuck do I know?
I'd say a lot of it's ignorance, really.
Well, it's exactly like the whole history of the suffragettes and giving women a vote thing. Like, the suffragettes had almost bumfuck nothing to do with actually giving women the vote. In fact, if anything, they were an impediment to it because most suffragettes were upper crust women who only wanted to give upper crust landowning women the vote and wanted no vote whatsoever for lower class women or lower class men of any description. Most of the actual universal suffrage advocates were called suffragists or chartists.
Yeah.
But even a lot of anti-feminists will say things like, well, feminism used to be necessary because suffragettes got women the right to vote. And it's just like, no. Most of the thing that prevented women from getting the vote for the all 50 years where they were kept from getting the vote. And that's the other thing. Most men couldn't vote for most of history either.
Yeah, pretty much. Only landowners could vote. Only white landowners.
Yeah. But most of the advocates against giving women the right to vote were other women, and the reason why was because the vote came with the obligation to the draft, i.e., if you could vote, then the government could call on you to die in a war somewhere, and it was essentially considered just recompense that if you were willing to die for your country, you could also have a say in it. So a lot of women, when faced with the idea of giving women the right to vote, were like, well, we would take the right to vote, but we really don't want the draft, so we'll forego the right to vote so that we don't have to get drafted. And then what did the government do? It gave women the right to vote without the draft, but it kept the draft alive for men for the many decades that followed that. So men get the right to vote when they essentially sell their lives to their governments. Women get the right to vote just when they ask. Just when they ask is whenever they'll actually get it.
One thing too about that was that a lot of the what sparked a lot of the voting shit were rich white women who were insulted by the idea of African Americans getting the right to vote before them. African American men, I should say, getting the right.
Oh yeah,
to vote
it was Susan B. Anthony, I think, who said that if black men get the right to vote before white women, black women will know an oppression under their own men that is comparable and even worse than slavery.
What the fuck?
Yeah, pretty much. It was a lot of it was vanity and some of it was vanity and ego.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck those people.
Yep, from beyond the grave, fuck you all.
That's it. I'm glad someone took it to Lacey though.
Reminds me of the one episode of Powerpuff Girls where like there's that super feminist villain.
Oh yeah, she used the symbol, the female symbol as a gun. I remember that.
Yeah, and then like she wanted to be paid entirely in Susan B. Anthony coins when she robbed the bank. And she got like extremely offended by the idea of money with men on it.
She was annoying.
But at least that was back when you could criticize feminism, instead of now when if anyone wanted to make that joke, I think it would be taken off the air before it had even finished its first airing.
Just cut mid-broadcast, basically.
Like if we're being honest, it would probably be more honest if it said something like, "We're sorry, we detected some misogynistic content in this episode. This episode will not be aired tonight." And then it would never be aired again.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. Hey, what's going on? How you doing, Brainstormer?
I'm not gonna say I'm broken because I'm not. I'm not going to give anyone the satisfaction of knowing.
You're just pissed, is what you're saying.
Yeah, which is kind of how I usually am. So
Yeah.
Also, that video was just kind of boring.
Yeah, she didn't actually say much, and that's one of the things that makes Lacey less objectionable than like Anita or something.
Yeah, what Lacey does is that Lacey is kind of she's just kind of blandly ignorant, and that's kind of what makes her aggravating, is that she'll say just these bland things that you know are wrong and or phrased really, really shittily. But and that's basically it. But she has just as stupid hot takes as the people who yell and say stupid shit.
Yeah,
Like
the Anitas and the Big Reds and the.
I love that name, Big Red.
It is funny.
Isn't that a drink?
What is it?
I don't think there is a drink called the Big Red. At least not the last I checked. Though her actual name is pretty funny too. Her actual name is Chanty Binks. Which is just the weird. Like, I love that even though she became famous as Big Red, her actual name is so, like, distinctive as well.
What, Big Red?
Yeah.
What is her actual name?
Chanty Binks.
What?
Chanty Binks is her actual name.
How her name is Fancy Binks? What?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Wow, her parents must really hate her.
I don't know if that's like her birth name or if she changed it somewhere or whatever, but
If
yeah.
she changed it to that, then then I think subconsciously she might hate herself.
I think if anything, Big Red has the opposite problem. She loves herself so much that she is not willing to give anyone else the credit of being associated with her. Judging by her reactions to getting interrupted for like 5 seconds, that would seem to fit more of the facts.
Alright.
I am also tired, and I think
You want to call it a night early?
I need to state this. I'm going to state it on the actual podcast too. Next week I will be starting a job.
Oh.
So it's going to be third shift. And it's going to affect the podcast a little bit. We're going to have to work out a schedule, and we will. This will be kind of our quote-unquote normal last week of podcasting for the foreseeable future. We're good Sunday, so Sundays are fine.
All right.
But yeah, I need to get a sleep schedule working for myself, so that's that. Dishwasher, by the way, folks. I'm going to be a dishwasher. Yay.
Hey, every step hey, it's everything, every little bit helps.
I would have preferred janitor. The thing is, I suck at washing dishes.
Because like how you have to scrub them and scrub them and scrub them and scrub them.
I hardly do it at home.
Yeah. That somehow doesn't surprise me, but nor can I blame you.
Yeah, so that's kind of a reason why, folks. So yeah, foreseeable future, I will be working at a restaurant, third shift, dishwasher, and I need a sleep schedule, so I'm going to call it a night. And our outro. With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom. Now fuck off.
I like that, what he just said.
thank you.